Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I am honored and thrilled, honestly, that you have taken the time to download and listen to this episode today. Today's episode is an interview with Kenneth Klabunde, the owner of Precedent Asset Management, which is a fee-only RIA in Indiana. Now, don't let Kenneth's soft-spoken nature fool you. He has been around the financial planning block a couple of times and has a ton of extremely valuable information to share. He has been in the broker-dealer world where he started out. He worked through the hybrid advisory world and then eventually broke away and started his own RIA back in 2013. Now, Kenneth gave us some awesome advice about how to properly break away and talk through some of the legal advice he was given about the process and what part of the advice he actually followed and which part he chose to ignore. Then we closed out talking about the team he has built at his firm and how he envisions the firm looking in the future, which I honestly think is an absolutely amazing way to build a firm. And it's just awesome to see the way things are coming together for him. Now, as always, you can find additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/58. And also be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Join the private group just for XYPN radio listeners. You can interact with other listeners, ask guest questions, and more. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Kenneth. Hey, Kenneth, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Hey, thank you, Alan. Great to talk with you.
So I think we actually met in person. Well, I guess it would have been the XYPN conference, but we also hung out in, I guess it was the Indianapolis conference with NAPFA that they had there last year, because you're not too far from Indianapolis, correct?
Yeah, so my office is in Indianapolis, and I did not make it to the XYPN conference, so I'm super excited to finally get there this year. But a few of the Indianapolis folks, we crashed the NAPFA conference. We didn't have passes, we just kind of walked in and got to hang out with you.
That's right.
Yeah, so we did meet in person there.
Because we did a meetup there, so don't try to show up to a NAPFA conference without a pass. We did a meetup. NAPFA will be mad that if they think we're telling people you can come for free.
I attended no sessions.
Yeah, so I guess just kind of kick this thing off. Let's go back and hear a little bit of your career story in terms of how you came to own your own RIA. So have you always been in financial planning? Has this kind of finance been your career, or did you start in a different industry?
No, so it's always been my career. And yeah, this does go way back. I started working in financial planning right out of my senior year in college back in 97. I was in...
You just dated yourself.
Yeah, I know I did. I know, which in this crowd is risky. But I was doing my undergraduate in business systems and finance. And we had a professor there who was a retired financial advisor, stockbroker, back in those days, mutual fund sales rep, I guess. And he was just super passionate about that industry. And keep in mind, this is before the day when we had like financial planning degree paths. I mean, that didn't even exist back then. And, CFP was barely a thing. It was mainly something insurance agents had. So this guy he had a class for juniors in the business school. It was called the Series 7 class. And basically 15 students could enroll every year. And we were sponsored by a firm to study for the 7 and take the 7 as juniors and seniors in college. And if you passed the Series 7 test, you got an A in the course. And if you failed the Series 7 test, you got a B in the course. And Alan, to me, that just sounded like a no-brainer for my GPA.
Take a B, right?
So I signed up for that class and didn't really put my whole heart into it, but it was an easy B. And I went and sat for the Series 7 as a junior in college, and I passed it. And so when I started looking for a job, midway through my senior year, here I am, a college student, and I'm already licensed in the industry as a broker.
That's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and back then it was unheard of. I think that might have been the only college in the country doing something like that at the time. So I walked out of college straight into a small regional broker-dealer firm at exactly the time they got acquired by a major regional bank. And started working as kind of your typical financial advisor back then. I had no idea what I was doing. I went through the 2-month training course, living in a hotel room in downtown Indianapolis, and they taught me what the George Putnam Fund of Boston was, which you may remember was Putnam's balanced fund. So I barely knew what a mutual fund was. Went through this training course. They sat me in a branch and told me to make a living. And so I guess I kind of started the really old-fashioned way, Alan. I mean, literally with a phone book, and being an introvert, that was a recipe for disaster. So I progressed from there, and about a year into my career there, making nothing. The firm I was with hired a CFP at the firm level and started encouraging everybody to, quote, sell financial plans. So we were supposed to go to our clients and offer them a financial plan, and this home office CFP was going to run the financial plan, and we were going to sit down and go over it with our clients. And again, as you know, back in those days, that was how you sold more mutual funds, right, Alan?
Sure. No, you sell planning to sell funds.
Yeah, brilliant. Exactly. Or annuities or life insurance or whatever it was that you were being paid to sell. So I did my first plan that way and chatted with the CFP. But in the process of doing that, what I discovered just a year into working as a financial advisor was that, wait a minute, I can actually serve people in this industry. I don't have to just be a sales guy. As a matter of fact, I don't have to be a sales guy at all. I can develop a skill that people actually need and serve them with an expertise that other people don't have. And that was just a real turning point for me that was something I could do. And so I began studying for the CFP and focusing my small business on serving clients through financial planning.
So at this point, did you have your own firm, or were you kind of an independent branch office? I was
still within this regional broker-dealer firm, and I worked with them for about 5 years, kind of, learning how to do financial planning. And somewhere along the way there, I began to realize that, wow, there's like a whole different industry coming of age here, which you and I would now call kind of the fee-only financial planning industry. And I really wanted to be part of that. But I didn't really know at that point in my career that there was, these two really distinct worlds, one being the broker-dealer world where you sold stuff, and the other one being, in RIA. That just wasn't on my radar.
It's interesting to me that it's still not on a lot of people's radar.
Right.
I still get emails from folks that listen to the podcast for the first time, and they say, I've been working for 5, 8, 10 years in the broker-dealer world. I've been selling. I didn't even know this fee-only planning-focused world existed. And of course, I'm thinking, have you been living under a rock? But I understand that the way that they're trained and the way that the work that they do, when you're still cold calling and you have to get 100 people to answer the phone a day, you may not have time to read blogs and listen to podcasts and go to conferences and such. So it's not what's encouraged. But yeah, I mean, that realization that you had, 15 years ago is still happening today,
right?
Which is just fascinating to me.
It is fascinating.
To each their own, but
yeah. Once I learned that there was this distinction, I made it kind of my mission to change the brokerage world, and so and that went really well.
I can tell. There's so many young broker dealers out there, so
I spent 15 years in the broker-dealer / hybrid RIA side of the industry, trying to change it, trying to make it more focused on serving people, less focused on selling things. So I was invited to another firm to launch their first ever effort at having a fee-only RIA and doing financial planning, and ran that for another regional brokerage firm for about 12 years. And at the end of the day, I realized that I'm not changing anything. And about the time that the whole fiduciary debate really began hitting the fan, I don't know, probably 5-6 years ago, when that became a topic of conversation among the brokerage community and the RIA community, I really realized that I'm simply not in the right spot, and I'm not sure that I can make it the right spot. So I began to kind of lay the groundwork for launching my own firm.
So I know I've personally never been in a firm where we sold, and I have nothing against people that are selling. I think that financial planning, I'm a big believer in the fee only world, obviously, but hybrid is always an interesting conversation because there are a lot of folks that will say you can do great financial planning and just occasionally sell products as needed. I mean, obviously you have experience in two different areas, and so this isn't a general statement. It's more just pertaining to your situation. But I mean, for the advisors that are out there in a hybrid firm that's kind of trying to balance these two, do you actually think it's possible to balance the two, or is it just a lost cause trying to be a hybrid firm and do the right thing?
I know a lot of people, and I would hopefully lump myself in with the group over the years that have very successfully balanced that. And there's a lot of really good planners and really good advisors that care deeply and are fiduciaries for their client that work in that hybrid environment. For me, where the clash really came into play was more at the firm leadership level. So even though you as an individual advisor can really be doing the right things and running that balance, I think pretty well, there's, at least in my experience, there was just a huge disconnect between what I was doing and the vision and purpose of the company as a whole. And that's why it didn't work for me long term.
That makes sense. And that has been kind of my experience too, is that, there are a lot of great advisors out there doing great things and also selling insurance. I mean, it's not that they're bad people but in many ways it's the model, and the model that does not necessarily encourage fiduciary action, particularly when you're on the product side, simply because fiduciary products don't make any money,
right?
If they even exist. But it was more about the culture of the firm actually grows, and how the advisors are compensated just tends to be not in line with kind of the fee-only fiduciary mindset. I mean, if you're getting bonuses and trips to Hawaii because you sold 20 certain variable annuities, it's kind of like, all right, well, go sell those 20. So.
Yeah, I was getting bonus trips even for fee-only fees. At one point, I finally just kind of recused myself from them and said, guys, no, that's not cool. We're not going to do that. And, but even for those that do balance those conflicts well in a hybrid environment, you still got to be careful, Alan. I look back on my own career and, there are things that I see long time ago that I kind of cringe at. The reality is that no matter how ethical you are and no matter how hard you're working to serve your client's best interest, it amazes me how much more frequently a high commission insurance product was the right solution than it is now. When there was a significant paycheck tied to that sale, even without knowing it, we're humans. You can create a spreadsheet and rationalize really easily as a fiduciary why that's in the best interest of the client. And as you look back on it, I go, man, it really wasn't. I was clearly being mind altered by the prospect of this, 10% loaded, commission check that might come my way next month. So for me, it was time to get out. And I was very excited about the prospect of doing that.
Fair enough. A friend of mine is looking at buying a small airplane with some buddies. And so I was looking at I tend to research things when they get in my head. And so I was researching how much does, airplane ownership cost. And I found the spreadsheet, and it was really detailed, and it went through all the different costs and how often you use it and where you normally fly and all these various things. And no matter the variables you put in, buying an airplane was always the recommendation. It didn't matter if you flew once a year or every day, buying an airplane was always the right call. And so it just made me laugh at you saying that. Kind of reminded me of that, just in terms of
it's the exact same thing. Yeah. Yep.
Like, look at the spreadsheet that this little green button is. It's always green. It's always buy.
It's always green. Buy a plane.
So for those of us that have never sold anything, how much, are 10% is that a legitimate commission number? I've always been curious, how much do you actually make to sell annuities or disability insurance policies versus term or not doing anything at all?
Sure.
Is it a pretty substantial percentage?
Yeah, it can be. So I never did any disability or policies, but annuities, you're typically going to get paid much like mutual funds back in the old days, you're going to typically be paid 5 to 7% of the deposit to the annuity. So if somebody, if you sell an annuity contract for $100,000, you might get $7,000 from that annuity. And which is why annuities have 7-year lock provisions on them. It's so the insurance company can recoup the commission that they pay to the agent up front. Life insurance is really unique. On most life insurance policies, whether it's term or permanent, and keep in mind my experience with this stuff is really limited. So
Sure.
Somebody who was actually a dedicated insurance agent might throw up red flags here. But in my experience, most life insurance type policies, usually the first year premium was nearly all commission. So if you sold a term policy that had an annual premium of $1,000, that first year premium, $1,000 was your commission.
Makes sense.
If you sold the same client a permanent life insurance policy that had a annual premium of $5,000, well, commission was $5,000. Which is why it's so tempting for agents to push permanent insurance.
And I think that
one
actually
step further.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you take that one step further, in my early years, I would do a lot of it. Back when the estate tax exemption was only $600,000, we would use life insurance frequently to help cover estate taxes. And you could make a really strong case for a client putting, a $30,000 annual premium into a life insurance policy to avoid estate taxes. And, there's huge commissions there, a huge incentive for agents to push those types of really big policies.
Well, and if there's that incentive, there's also the incentive to churn those policies every 7 to 10 years because you get a new commission check, because it doesn't sound like you're getting paid on an ongoing basis. You're just getting paid for the initial purchase, basically.
Yeah, you usually get maybe 5% of the ongoing premium, but it's not as significant as that upfront kick. So yeah, if you sell an annuity and it has a 7-year lock period on it, you better believe that agent is usually looking to replace that annuity 7 years later. Although, FINRA and other regulators have been cracking down on that.
Yeah, they've clued in a little bit. Yeah, and I know I bought my term life insurance policy through Low Load Insurance Services, who we've had on this podcast, and Service Fee Only Advisors. I asked them how much they would make off of it, and they basically said the same thing. So it lines up that term policy they made, their commission was 1 year of
1 year premium.
So, poor guys, they didn't make much money off me.
No,
So each their own. But so thank you for going down that rabbit hole. I'm just kind of curious. I'm always wondering how these things get paid out, because obviously not easily accessible information. Okay, so you kind of see the world that you don't want to be in, realize that there's this kind of this other world. So did you kind of start your own firm and take clients with you? Kind of what did the breakaway process look like for you?
It's a grueling process. So, if anybody's listening that is planning on it, go in eyes wide open. It's not easy.
What he means is it's very easy. Don't stress. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Just call Alan and he'll take care of all of it. Yeah. So I started the process about a year before I actually made the change. I was very fortunate that I had been at the same firm for 12 years, and I think just by dumb luck, I had managed to hire in and avoid signing any kind of an employment agreement. So I had no employment agreement, no non-compete agreement. There was just nothing in writing about my 12-year tenureship there. So from a legal standpoint, that certainly made life easier. So about 12 months before leaving, I kind of started going through the whole process of preparing the groundwork for an RIA and all the stuff that goes along with that, all the stuff that you know better than anybody, because XYPN helps handle it for everybody. But, the branding and the website and the compliance and, prepping your ADV and client agreements and getting a phone number and an email address and a Regis office space and all that groundwork that has to be laid.
So now, when did you do this? What year?
I launched the firm officially November of 2013.
So we're almost at 3 years. So over
Correct.
2.5, somewhere pushing 3 years. Okay. So So, I guess I launched in August of 2012. So not too much before you. That is a heck of a process.
It is.
Especially, and it feels like, and I know obviously this is our business. So self-promoting here a little bit, but there wasn't anything out there. There was no handbook or ebook or guide or checklist to how to start a firm. You really did have to dig in there and just figure it all out. And as you said, it took you a year for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of that time was just research, trying to figure out, what's the lay of the landscape here? I mean, I was fortunate this is a big reason why I'm part of XYPN. I mean, I knew one of your previous employers, Alan, and I had, unbeknownst to you, I had kind of followed your career for a while. And so I had watched from a distance. I guess you could call me a stalker. I had watched.
Interesting. I did not know that.
I had watched you and Sophia both launch your firms. Of course, XYPN didn't exist yet, but I had seen what you did. I'd seen what Sophia had done and a few others at the time. And I thought, okay, well, I can do that too. I didn't have the benefit of you having already laid it out there exactly how to do it. So yeah, it's a much easier process now. But yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, that's where XYPN came from, were so many stories like yours and mine and Sophia's, where we just kept all saying like, wow, we're all trying to figure this out ourselves, and we're talking amongst each other, trying to figure out, hey, how did you integrate these technology systems, or how did you get a website set up? Because you think when you go to college and you have a college degree and you have a CFP and all of this, that you would suddenly know how to run a business. And the truth is, none of us know how to run businesses until we actually had to run one for the first time.
Exactly.
And it is not as easy as it looks.
That's exactly right.
People that are solid at running businesses don't let you know about setting up your own QuickBooks and having to, do payroll and all of these things. So, okay. So you did not have a non-compete, which is a question we get all the time is, who can review my non-compete? So we have to send them over to attorneys. So were you able to bring a pretty decent book of business with you, or did you kind of start fresh?
I brought a pretty decent book of business. I mean, it was nothing like what I had been managing previously because, a lot of the relationships I had were kind of firm level relationships, if that makes sense. But at the end of the day, I did end up, beginning the new firm with roughly $20 million in assets, which, obviously is a fantastic starting point. My window of time, from the moment I resigned to when the panic attacks stopped was relatively short. I mean, relatively short, meaning maybe 3 months instead of 3 years.
Sure.
So I was able to bring along. I'm not a sales guy, so I didn't, my attitude was, I have no desire to leave on bad terms. I have no desire to get into a fight over clients. Clients don't need that. So my approach was very, very soft. Here's where I am. You now know where to find me. And that was kind of the extent of it. And so I was certainly grateful for those that contacted me and said, hey, yeah, we'd like to keep working together. That provided the seed that I needed to be successful out of the gate and ultimately have a viable practice.
Yeah. And I'll admit, I am jealous of folks like yourself that have the patience for that. I mean, I started my firm with 0 clients, but that was because I was 25 and didn't have the patience to build up the relationships in the book of business to be able to separate out. And I will say that, we're always talking on this show about figure out your personal finances, figure out how you're going to afford everything. The income side is very important. And you figured out the income side instead of doing a side hustle or whatnot while you're starting your firm. You kind of brought the assets over. Now, I know there are a lot of folks out there that say, well, I signed a non-compete. And if you sign a non-compete, honor it. You have to honor it. I know too many people that have been sued over it.
Oh, me too.
Follow it. Don't mess around, because even if you're in the right, your old firm, if they're vindictive, they have more money than you, and they aren't trying to start a firm so they can bury you in legal costs. I've seen it happen. So hire an attorney, have them review all your documents just to be sure. Not a lot of folks are in your, I don't know what percentage have to sign all the documents, but it sounds like you were in a fortunate position that you did not have all that stuff in place to have to deal with.
And even though I didn't, Alan, I still hired an attorney.
Well, there you go. So hire an attorney.
Because you never know. There are far more missteps that you can inadvertently make than the most obvious one of violating, a non-compete agreement. Employment law is not a simple matter, and client privacy is not a simple matter.
No, it's a great point. How did you go about finding your attorney? Was it just a referral or somebody you already knew?
I already knew. So a close friend of mine, an attorney that has handled my clients' estate planning for 18 years now, that I've worked closely with over the years. he was the first person I contacted, when I began thinking about this. For moral support and encouragement, and to say, hey, do you think I could succeed at this? And then because he's a well-established attorney in Indianapolis, he was able to give me an attorney that specializes in FINRA and SEC law, so that I kind of had somebody to guide me through, what happens with my Series 7? What's the difference between an RIA and a hybrid RIA? And what am I doing here? And then he referred me to an employment law attorney to say, okay, so here's the contracts I don't have. What do I need to be careful of?
Was there anything that you can remember that was important you were supposed to watch out for, despite not having any of those?
Yeah. And this didn't come from the attorney. So this is really, really important. I'm pretty passionate about this. So some of the legal advice that I was given was all about protecting myself, covering myself, making sure that I was okay. And as I listened to some of that advice, I'll be honest, Alan, I ended up not following an awful lot of it. Now, I did the steps I needed to do. I did the things I needed to do. I avoided the blunders that could easily be made, and the legal counsel was really helpful with that. But some of the things that I was being counseled to do, I felt like they would put me in a combative position with the firm I was leaving, and I didn't want that. I felt that some of the advice was almost soliciting a lawsuit. And you got to keep in mind, attorneys have conflicts too, because if I had gotten sued, my attorney would have made a lot more money. So I ended up actually disregarding a lot of the advice that I was given. And when I left the firm, I went into the CEO with I'm not sure the word for it, an incredibly, I guess, humble attitude, and said, listen, I'm not a fit here anymore, but I really want this to be a win for both of us. I really want for no clients to be harmed or confused or distraught in the process. I offered to buy the business from them, which I was told not to do by attorneys. I offered to stay on board for 6 months to train my replacement. I just kind of laid it on the table. I said, you know what? We're not a fit. What do you want to do with me? I'm here to serve you, to help make this transition happen. So that's what I did. Keep in mind, this is the brokerage world. So I was promptly walked out the door.
No, and it's so interesting. I don't know. I think it's so cultural, and I understand the fear that you're going to run off with client lists and all of that sort of thing. It's fascinating to me that that's a fear, and it just kind of shows maybe that the model doesn't work. That, if a member of the XY Planning Network team left and they took all of our members' names and email addresses and contact information and went and started their own network, or they went and joined, another organization like the Garrett Planning Network, I just don't have a fear that anybody that's not that no one will leave, but just that, I don't know, that just doesn't scare me. I mean, they can do that and whatever, it sucks and I would be sad, but okay,
sure.
We have the relationship with the advisors. You have the relationship with the clients. I don't know. It's just an interesting cultural belief system. And maybe it's just the way it's all set up, that you have the relationship and the firm doesn't have the relationship. And, you're going to steal all these names and email addresses, but it just doesn't sound like much of a relationship if somebody can just easily poach your clients. It sounds like, you're just sitting around waiting for your company to dissolve at that point.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of a broken system, and it's sad the way it functions. I certainly wish it wasn't that way. I wish that, we lived in an industry where you can safely give your 2 weeks notice or whatever and not be guaranteed an escort to the door. But that's the reality that we live in, and certainly the reality that, all of our members have faced with as they have left and launched their own firms. So
sure. I mean, when I got fired, I was escorted to the door, so I understand. I was allowed to come back. I got fired on a Friday. I came back on a Monday to get my stuff, but computer access pulled immediately. And and I remember feeling like, wow, this is like the movies. I didn't know it actually happened this way, and it does. I mean, people are still escorted that way.
It does. It pays to kind of have some pretty good technology chops too, because, when you resign, your laptop's going to immediately quit working. Even if you have a personal phone that's connected to their Exchange server, that's going to quit working. Of course, there's things you can do to prevent that ahead of time. Disconnect your phone from their Exchange server and things like that. So it helps to look into the future and realize what's coming and prepare for it.
Yeah, we should probably make a checklist of things to think about before resigning. Because once you resign, there is no time to do anything because that email goes out and suddenly like you said, your phone doesn't work suddenly.
Exactly. Yep.
So, so you decided to start your own firm. This is kind of late 2013 at this point. You were able to bring some clients over with you. What did you kind of establish initially as kind of your firm, your model? I mean, were you AUM centric, AUM only? Were you how did you kind of set up your fee structure and your service model to get started?
So to get started, I guess I launched in anticipation of you launching XYPN. So I already shared with you, I had kind of watched what you were doing. I had watched what Sophia was doing. And I really felt that you guys were setting a much needed new precedent for the industry, thus the name of my firm. So I launched with the combination of monthly retainer and AUM pricing model. And it's really been pretty much so unchanged since, matter of fact, I don't think my fee description in my ADV has had to change at all since launching. So it's proven to be a good combination. I had previously been strictly AUM with occasional upfront large planning fees. One of the things that really bothered me about my career prior to starting my own firm was having to tell people no, that I can't help you for whatever reason. You don't have enough assets, or you can't afford a $5,000 planning fee, or whatever it is. My philosophy is that if somebody asks me for help, I'm going to help them. And so having this combination of monthly retainer and AUM together meant that I never again had to tell anybody no. The bar was low. There was zero asset requirement. And if you would like my help, I'm here to help you. So it's just been a beautiful transition for me, very freeing to be able to look anybody in the eye that asks for help and say, yeah, sure, no problem. I can help you.
And you had the opportunity with 20 million in assets to just say 1% AUM, I'll make my 200,000 and move on. That was certainly sitting there. So it's fascinating that you made the decision to go ahead with the monthly retainer plus AUM. And so I don't see a lot of people with assets already that are eager to make the move. I mean, one, obviously, I'm a big believer in it being the model of kind of the future and where we'll see firms going. But did you get any pushback from clients when you were trying to implement a monthly plus AUM? I mean, or was it because, you were moving them over from either product sales or maybe, kind of a wrap fee or something like that, I'm assuming.
Sure. Well, and I was actually already pure RIA at the prior firm. Even though the firm was hybrid, I was operating strictly on a fee-only basis.
Oh, okay.
So it actually was no change for clients. One of the things that I do with the pricing structure, and this is still the case if you look at our website, is that the monthly fee becomes waived after you reach a certain threshold of AUM. And my existing clients all satisfied that threshold. So it wasn't like I was suddenly adding a new fee on for existing clients.
Okay.
I was simply opening the door.
I like that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I was simply opening the door for people that didn't meet those requirements to be able to be served. And yeah, so you're right. I can see why a lot of new firms that have existing assets wouldn't do that. But this transition for me, monetarily, for me, it was a huge step down in income, and it always will be. And that was part of my plan. I did not launch a firm to make more money than I was previously. And so it was a philosophical thing for me. It wasn't because I wanted my 200 grand and call it a day. It was because I philosophically had a passion for serving people, and AUM only didn't facilitate that. It created the need to say no, which didn't make me happy when I wanted to be able to help somebody. So the model that you had created just fit perfectly with that desire.
And JD Bruce from Abacus, who, they have $1.5 billion under management, kind of had that same statement. But it was interesting, and he makes this point. I think it's one that's really important to reiterate. It's that just because you create a fee structure that allows you to work with everyone doesn't mean you have to work with everyone.
Absolutely.
You can still work with people that you love, people that are really passionate and have a need and fit into your service model, fit into your niche.
Yep.
For anyone that wanted to be sure I said that word during the episode. you can still be further defined. You just don't have to, your baseline definition of a client that you can work with doesn't have to start with an asset number.
Correct.
And that's what I love so much, is that it isn't do you have $500,000? Okay, now let's talk.
Now let's
it's
talk,
just,
yeah.
hey, let's just talk and see if we're a good fit.
Yep. Yeah. Ever since the beginning of my career, I'm an introvert. I am not a sales guy. I entered the industry as a sales guy and never, ever liked that feeling. And I've never wanted to be that. And whenever I had that threshold of, oh, okay, you do have $500,000, great, we can talk. I felt like a dirty salesman again, and I didn't want to do that anymore.
I hear you.
I didn't want my motive to be, okay, you have enough money that I can rake in a big enough fee, let's work together. I wanted my motive to be, you have a need, and I have a skill that fits it.
So you said, if you go to our website, so I'm assuming there is more than just you at the firm. So you're 3 or 2.5, pushing 3 years in. Where are you at just in a firm perspective when it comes to staffing?
The firm started, I'll give you the progression. It started with just me and Virtual Partners Group, which is a virtual assistant firm out in LA. So it was me and then this VA for the first year and a half. And then in February of 2015, I stopped using the VA, although we still use them for some stuff, but I stopped relying on them fully. And I hired Stacy as a part-time titles practice manager. So a part-time assistant joined me in February of 2015. Somewhere in there, my wife took on the role of scheduling coordinator. So there's 3. And then the big jump for me, at least from a financial standpoint, was this last October. So getting close to a year ago now, I hired in a full-time person, Patrick, who became our financial planning analyst. So I guess we're technically at 4 employees right now, 2 full-time, 2 part-time. And I feel like we're really just kind of finally getting into our groove and running on all cylinders. And I'm not pulling my hair out. So that's the progression we've been through and where we're at now.
And it's a huge step. I think it's understated how hard it is to bring on that first employee. I mean, we all know the cost perspective, but just the time and energy it takes to train and get them on all the new systems and the trust to hand things off. I mean, it's actually a pretty big leap when you bring that first person into the fold.
It is. And, I think I spent the first 17 years of my career thinking about how I needed to write a procedures manual. And boy, there is nothing like bringing on an employee to force you to write a procedures manual.
No kidding.
But it's so crucial, to be able to train somebody and then maybe, hopefully not, but someday train their replacement or just bring on additional new people. But, you want to do the whole point from this point forward is to do everything once. For me as the owner of the firm to go, okay, this is exactly how we need to do this to best serve clients. And instead of me doing it and then me doing it again and me doing it again and just hoping that people learn by osmosis, I had to learn to be really intentional about me doing it and capturing it and recording it and documenting it and saying, okay, here is exactly how we do this to best serve people. Run with it. And it's been working just beautifully.
So that sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? I mean, how are you capturing various steps? I mean, is it just like a Google Doc? Do you have a system that tracks steps? I mean, how are you actually recording all of the various processes that you have?
So depending on the nature of the process, it is either stored in a CRM workflow, and we are now using WealthBox. Previously, we were on Redtail. Either one has a workflow engine that'll get the job done. So some of those workflows are just literally embedded in a CRM workflow engine. Stacy's begun to actually write a physical procedures manual using Google Docs so that she can, just HTML search through that for things that she needs to do. Our most critical component to the whole procedures thing is this little dinky tiny application that I believe is Mac only at this point, but called Text Expander. And It's one of those little programs that you use so you never have to type your email address again. So instead of typing your email address, you type *EM and your email address pops up.
So it's like a shortcut.
It's a shortcut program, except we took it to its most illogical end. And we've actually, so we have these massive client procedures all built into these text expanders where I can create a task in the CRM for one of my team members that says, we need to do a distribution from this account to this client, run the text expander number 34. And they open up a task and type in 34, and this huge set of instructions and template emails and everything that they need to do that just kind of appears. So we've built up
in the CRM,
in an email to the client, in anything you need it to appear in, it just appears in. It is the most. It's a
no idea you could do that inside a Wealthbox.
It's a magical piece of software. Literally, I think Text Expander, which if you're doing a search for it online, I think the company that makes it is called Smile. It is the pivotal procedures piece of our firm. Is the library of how to do what and how to. And for me, client communication is a really important thing. So I'm a little overly controlling on exactly how we communicate to clients, so that we're not bothering them, that we're clear and concise and understandable, not using jargon and all that kind of stuff. So all of our client communication is written by me, but it's permanently stored as these text expanders. So then team members can then begin to use it as their own with full confidence that it meets kind of our criteria for how to effectively communicate something with a client.
So I never get on the computer whenever I'm recording a podcast, and I am on the computer right now. I'm looking up Text Expander. It's literally textexpander.com. This thing is $8 a month or $10 a month, depending on if you want to pay annually. And that's for a team that allows you access to a bunch of different people. That's incredible. So I had no idea. How does it get into like the Wealthbox CRM to create tasks? Is Wealthbox with their API, is there an integration that you've created, or it just does it?
So wherever your cursor is in your computer, if your cursor is in a Wealthbox task, if your cursor is sitting wherever your next keystroke is going to appear, whether that's an email or a Wealthbox task, whatever you're about to type next, Text Expander's in the background constantly monitoring your keystrokes. And if you enter a magic keystroke sequence, which ours all begin with a semicolon because you don't use those much. So if I type semicolon tax review as one string, then this whole email to the client pops up auto-populated for their annual tax review. And I would normally type that particular sequence into an email to a particular client. So wherever your cursor is, that's where the Text Expander will show up. And so yes, that can be
so cool.
That can be your Wealthbox task. It can be a workflow. It can be an email. It could be a Word document for a letter to a client. It can be your blog. That's a pretty powerful little tool. So,
all right. Well, isn't it amazing where technology has brought us?
I know. I love it.
You need to tell Text Expander how you're using their system, because I don't think they intended it for folks like you.
They did not. They did not.
Working very well.
We were a beta user for their new version, and they learned what we were doing with it. And I think their jaws were kind of on the floor that, this little program that they intended to auto type your signature line was being used to produce, 3-page letters with custom fill-in fields for clients. It's robust enough that it works very well for that. So anyway, that's how we're doing the procedures.
Well, but it's huge, because this is something that I think is such a major struggle when you're bringing someone on to give up control, to give up, when you're really picky about client communication. I was always extremely sensitive to client kind of interaction, and not necessarily like, am I using jargon, but just more client experience. Yep. Handing anything like that off is a challenge. And this basically is giving you the ability to speak the words, but have it come from someone else, to be able to outline the process, to be every single step is taken care of. Because if someone checks the box to say, hey, we we did this step, then it was done. And if it's still sitting there, you can say, well, obviously we missed a step.
Right.
It's just so powerful. It's so much easier to hire whenever you can do this. But this is also why you can't wait until you're working 80-hour weeks to decide to hire, because it does take time to get this stuff implemented so that a new hire can actually take work off your plate instead of just being a time consumer for you.
Yeah. So for people that are looking to hire, a year down the road or 2 years down the road, or they're not even thinking about it yet, I began using Text Expander and creating these automated procedures when I was by myself. I didn't know I was going to use it to hire people. I did it because I was tired of typing the same email over and over to clients. And so, I got Text Expander for myself. So over the course of probably 3 years, because I started this before I launched the firm, I had already begun to kind of build my library of what it looks like when Kenneth communicates with a client and how that needs to happen. And so you're right, because if I had hired somebody and then tried to build this library of procedures and communication pieces, it would have been way too daunting. So get on it early, do it just for yourself. Just do it for the sole purpose of streamlining your own workflow. And then when you do bring in employees, you're ready to roll.
It does make it so much easier. And I think it's something that whenever you do it every day, you almost don't realize, one, how efficient you actually can be doing tasks that just because you've done it 100 times, but how inefficient we can be sometimes because we just get in a rut of doing it the same way over and over and over. And I can't tell you how many of the same emails I get from a certain system, and it emails me every time something happens in the system. I get about 30 emails a day, and I just become numb to it. And yet I'm deleting 30 emails a day that I don't need.
You don't need, right?
And so if you just think about it and actually focus on it, get in there, start digging around, figure out ways to become more efficient. Like you're saying, don't type the same email more than once. You shouldn't be, doing reoccurring tasks over and over without some assistance.
Exactly.
It really is amazing. So kind of as we're coming to an end of our podcast here, so you have this team in place. Kind of what's the future hold? What are you trying to build here? That, I guess, what do you want your firm to become? What do you want for yourself from your business?
So I want to be like that old guy that just quietly sits in my cabin somewhere in Montana, and clients call me because I've just got 60 years of wisdom of doing this. That's where I want to be. I really don't have a whole lot of desire to be the CEO of a really big firm. And so when Patrick came on board, and of course his career path is to work as a financial planning analyst. He's working on his CFP. Ultimately, he's gonna be doing what you and I do. And when I hired him, I told him, I said, I'm happy working by myself. I like what I'm doing. I'm going to be doing it till I'm dead. So you're going to come on board and you're going to help me do it better. And you're going to be here for 5 years or 2 years or 10 years. I don't know, but I'm going to teach you everything I know. And we're going to leverage, my 18 years in the city to continue to acquire clients for you and for me. And whenever you're ready, go. Just go. Start your own firm. So my vision for Precedent Asset Management is that we grow by multiplication. I feel like I can have a greater impact on client lives, not by making another giant RIA, but by, facilitating the creation of lots of small IRAs that have really solid procedures and a passion for serving people well. So that's kind of the long-term vision of where we're headed.
So that's almost a residency apprenticeship program is kind of what you're envisioning, is that you're going to, in many ways, every few years churn out a new stellar advisor that actually knows what they're doing, knows how to do real financial planning, and knows how to run a company. That's phenomenal. That's the goal.
Yeah. So that was kind of the hook I used to hire somebody in. I came from a situation where I didn't have any contracts and non-competes, and I valued that. So I certainly wasn't going to ask anybody else to sign any of that junk. And so if you're not asking them to sign that stuff, well, then what's your goal? Well, if you want to be here forever, that's great. But let me show you how to do this. This is a great way to serve people. This is a great lifestyle. This is a great career. there's a lot to learn, an awful lot to learn. I'm still learning, but let me teach you the stuff that I've learned so far. You can help me do it better. And when you're ready, fly, and then I don't have to quit doing what I'm doing to be a CEO, which does not sound appealing to me.
Yeah, it's a different world when you have to manage people. It's a big step that many of us either don't want to take or shouldn't take, just depending on what your lifestyle goals are and all of that.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
Well, Kenneth, we'll kind of close today's recording, I guess, with the question I love to ask our guests, and that is, if there's one thing that you could go back and tell, maybe this is the Kenneth that was thinking about starting his own firm in 2013, or maybe if it's even further back as you're getting into the industry, if there's just one thing you wish you could go back and tell yourself, what do you think that one thing would be?
I would have told myself to start this a lot sooner. Not too soon, not right out of the gate. I'm really grateful for my career track. But if I had to go back and tell myself something, it would be, hey, how about you do this in 2008, not 2013? Because having my own firm, serving clients the way that I've designed to serve them and that I know is best for how I work, there's nothing like it in the world. I wish I'd done it sooner. So that'd be my one thing.
Fair enough. Don't start too soon, but don't wait too long either. I think our overexuberance and our fear can sometimes compete with each other, and it does it makes it difficult to make the decision to go solo, but I know very few people that regret it once they do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Kenneth, thank you so much for taking the time to be on. This has been a ton of fun, so thank you so much.
My pleasure. It was great chatting with you, and really appreciate the time.
Kenneth has just an awesome story, and I think it's one that a lot of listeners can connect to. The breakaway process is tough, and knowing when to go solo is even tougher. But I think Kenneth gave some great advice, particularly on how to manage the actual breakaway process, how to do it the right way, even though it was against some of the legal advice he was actually given. Now, be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.